doing, it's a swab going through the nose, into the back of your nose, into the back of the sinus cavity here, and it's picking up particles of DNA, genetic material. So this can be bacteria, viruses, all kinds of different viruses, all kinds of genetic fragments, your human DNA. And what they're looking for are strips of DNA or genetic material. It's not actual virus they're detecting, it's strips of genetic material. And this is going to be real important in a minute. Remember these base pairs, CG and ANT, back to biology class. We'll come back to that in a minute. New York Times had this article, your coronavirus test is positive, but maybe it shouldn't be. Look at this. 3 sets of testing data compiled from Massachusetts, New York, and Nevada. Up to 90% of people testing positive carried barely any virus. 90% of these positive hardly had any virus in them. Most tests set the limit at 40. Let me explain real quick. So they get that genetic material. There's too little material to detect, so they have to amplify it. So they put it through a cycle. And just think of a Xerox copier. Right. Mayor Pope and my dad sold Xerox copier machines way back in the day together. So a little connection there. But think of the Xerox copier just copying the DNA material. You've got to go through 40 cycles. That's what they're doing with this test. Some tests are doing 37. Most are doing 40. And you are positive for the coronavirus if the test process required up to 40 cycles. If you get above 40 cycles, everyone's positive. If you get below 30 copies or 30 cycles, hardly anyone's positive. Why is that so important? Because of this article. This is from the Infectious Disease Society of America. They're looking at the PCR test with COVID-19, and here's what they found. Results demonstrate that infectivity, that's what we care about. Is there no virus in me to infect my neighbor? Right. Infectivity is significantly reduced when the PCR cycle values are greater than 24. For every 1 unit increase in the cycles, the odds ratio for infectivity decreased by 32%. Translation in layman's terms. You're not very infectious if your swab doesn't turn positive with under 24 cycles. Here's what we see. So in this current PCR test, under 30 copies, almost nobody's positive. So going back to this article, what they're saying in this article is they only saw infectivity if you had so much virus in you that it actually showed up with just 24 cycles of Xerox copying. Okay, I know that's a little complicated, but you have to have a whole lot of virus in you to be infective. But this test will call you positive. Once you're up to 40 copies, you'll finally turn positive. If you don't do above 30 copies, almost everyone is negative below 30 copies. So we're getting a positive result, and it doesn't translate to that you have a live virus in you that can infect your neighbor. So, in summary, infectivity only in people with symptoms and less than 24 cycles run on the PCR. So what we've always known with viruses, to transmit, you got to be symptomatic. Almost all transmission is in symptomatic people, and you've got to have a lot of viral load that will show up on
virus. And the real question is, are they a threat for transmission? And I'm wondering if you think we could use a cutoff of viral loads determined by PCR to say this patient is no longer infectious, can go home, can go to a nursing facility, because right now the physicians are really having a hard time with that.
Right. Again, a good question. And what is now sort of evolving into a bit of a standard that if you get a cycle threshold of 35 or more, that the chances of it being replication competent are minuscule. So that if somebody, and we have patients, and it's very frustrating for the patients as well as for the physicians. Somebody comes in and they repeat their PCR and it's like 37 cycle threshold, but you almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold cycle. So I think if somebody does come in with 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period.
Yeah, because as you know, we can't easily culture infectious viruses. You don't have a BSL-3 lab everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
So is the threshold cycle is reporting out a pretty standard practice in doing a diagnosis now rather than just positive or negative? Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, if when you go in, when I get my test, it's negative. When someone comes in and it's positive, they don't give them the threshold until you go back and ask for it.
Okay. But they've got it.
They've got it. They've got it.